Today I am joined by a duo, owners, whatever you want to call them, Battle Grappling founders. This is going to be fun because they got Battle Grappling coming up, and I cannot wait to get down and dirty. Thank you guys for joining me.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
for
us.
having us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know we were supposed to chat prior to the last event that never ended up happening. I had the pleasure of doing some commentary for it. But before we get to this next event, I want to go back and talk about like the beginnings of Battle Grappling. And you guys let me know, how did this whole thing get started?
Well, ultimately, what we started doing was kickboxing and MMA smoker shows at our gym. We wanted a space for people to have their first couple of fights, to get experience. And the grappling part of it came about pretty organically. Some of our friends who were higher level grapplers wanted to get some matches in, kind of like right before a big competition. And so they put together a little bracket. They did all of themselves, really. We just hosted it on the show and refereed it. And, slowly grew from there. We just started getting more and more people interested in grappling on the show. And we decided, hey, let's make this its own thing. So we were calling our smoker Battle at Bellingham, which is where we're based, where our gym is, Bellingham MMA. And so then we said, well, how about Battle Grappling? That way it's related, people can see the connection, but it is its own thing. And it just kind of grew from there. We had our first dedicated grappling show in February of 2020, just before the pandemic hit. We were filming at the time with a couple little GoPro cameras.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty low key. And then during the pandemic, we kind of decided, we ran a secret show, one that we pre-filmed and put out later because, of course, professional athletics was actually allowed to happen. That was one of the few things you actually could do. Amateur athletics was not. So we said, hey, let's do a pro grappling event. We can actually have it. We'll put it out on YouTube. We did, and it was a lot of fun. So we just kept pursuing it. A little while later, we did a teen girl tournament. That was our second, our second real show with an audience, you know what I mean, where people could actually watch, although it was primarily, the competitors and their friends and family.
It was a digital audience too. That was the first time we actually sold the live stream.
Very true.
One interesting thing about all this is that once we did that secret show where we pre-filmed, we really had issues with going back to sort of this crappy camera that we were doing before the GoPros, because the quality was so good and the filming was so good that we knew we had to improve the live stream aspect of this instead of just allowing it to be like a camera set up in a corner.
For sure. What about the gym itself though? Like, how did that all get started? When did you guys start the gym and start the whole process of that all coming together? And on top of that, have the smoker MMA shows sort of gone out the window since you guys started Battle Grappling?
No, we still run the smoker. We call it Battle Pancration. Now it's kind of formalizing it and putting it into the Battle family of products, if you will.
And taking it back to more of an old school mentality with Pancration, with actual, instead of doing full on MMA, we're doing sort of a modified MMA for people who are just starting out. So what that means is we do striking on the feet, and once it goes to the ground, they're just doing grappling. So it's not quite like old school pancration, but it's a great way for athletes to get MMA experience before they actually do MMA.
And when it comes to the gym, I started training with my coaches in 2005. And at the time, they were sharing space at different gyms here in Bellingham, and I was traveling down to their gyms. In 2010, they opened up the Bellingham MMA as its own entity. And, we really started running classes in a serious way up here, at least on a full-time basis. And then we ended up purchasing the gym in 2016 when they decided that they wanted to move on. So it's been quite a ride, business ownership and becoming a coach during your pro career, or kind of like just before it started and through that pro career, was pretty interesting. But that's a whole other podcast.
Definitely. Now, obviously, as you said, you started it sort of just like pre-pandemic. When you found out the pandemic had started, what was the thought process there? And were you like, crap, we just got this started, now this is happening?
Can I tell you that's kind of how it was? We literally ran the first show 2 weeks before they shut down every single gym and every single business. So it was sort of like, oh, well, that was fun. I'm glad that we did that. That was an interesting experiment. We had like 250 people who showed up for the first event. And we had a huge list of athletes who wanted to compete. And then, it was sort of like nothing. We couldn't do anything. But then during the pandemic, we were doing all these videos for our gym. That's how we kept our gym open during the pandemic. Is we went to the members and we said, hey, we can provide you with video content from home. If you continue to want to run your membership, let us know, and it'll help the gym. It'll keep the building. And Hunter and I went and got other jobs to support ourselves. And so we had about 40 students who stepped up and said, hey, I'll keep paying my tuition. I'll take these videos. And that's how we were able to survive the pandemic. But we got really good at video production because we were making videos for our students. So during the pandemic, we had a lot of athletes coming to us and saying, hey, I am still training at home. I'm still training with my friends and my family. Their poor families. But their poor girlfriends, dogs, kids. We said, hey, well, why don't we get 8 of you together and we'll run this like secret show, and it'll just be the 8 of you in the gym. We won't have an audience. And it was amazing. It was a good time. I mean, there was no pressure because we didn't sell anything. We didn't do an audience. So we could just focus on the filming.
And I've seen obviously the production from a behind the scenes standpoint. Like I did commentary, as I said, at the last event at Titan Martial Arts or Titan Training Facility, whatever you want to call it, Titan. And like it's as professional as it comes. You've got, the guy behind the scenes running everything. You're running the switchboard. You're running the audio. There's the jib arm. There's however many cameras you have. But I want to ask, like, how long did it take? Like, each step obviously was quite small, or did it go from the GoPros to boom, we're doing this for real?
No.
Well, the funny thing about that is that the first show we did, it was literally, I used to do everything. So I used to run like 4 cameras. I ran the switcher. I did commentary, and I also had to do like customer service because people would be like unhappy about something, or they'd be like, I can't see the stream, or I don't understand how to view it. So what would you say? Was it little steps?
Of course, it was small steps along the way, and I'll give a big shout out to one of our sponsors, Dreamwalk Coffee. Christian, the owner of that company, he does some live streaming stuff for shows as well. And we saw him do our friend show, WASA, Washington Submission Series. And I was like, oh, that's cool. He actually has like multiple camera angles and like he has a setup. And so we ended up going and picking his brain, and he gave us a ton of advice and some starting points.
Let us borrow the switcher for the first couple shows because we couldn't afford it.
I think overall my business philosophy has always been influenced heavily by my coaches and mentors over the years, which is always start small with an investment you don't mind losing, right? Like, put as little money into it as you can to be effective so that, if it doesn't work out, you haven't taken on a ton of debt. And I think that's a big mistake people make with businesses. They like start out and they want that huge training center. They're going to open a gym. They're going to buy get a 10,000 square foot facility. And that's a lot of pressure. It means if it doesn't work out, you lose a lot. Whereas we've just always, every show, we always say that we never made money from the show. And it's true because we would pay athletes, and then whatever money left over, instead of putting it in our pocket, we reinvest that in the show. So, okay, this show made $1,500 profit. So now let's take that and buy some more equipment.
Let's buy a new camera. Let's buy a jib.
Usually it's one thing because all this stuff is so expensive.
Yeah, let me tell you, it hurt when we bought the jib because we didn't get paid that show. We were so close.
Well, I was gonna say that is like you can tell, you guys are very open and honest about like all the money going back to the athletes, and then obviously anything left over, you can tell from the production standpoint, it is going back into the company. So let's move away from Battle Grappling and let me ask you about ADCC versus CJI then, because that's sort of the topic at hand, and talking about money going back to the athletes. What are your thoughts on Craig doing all this?
I'll start, but I think Laura has
more I have a lot to say. I've been sharing so many memes about this.
I love it, honestly. I think it's something that like one of our friends, Kajon Johnson, who runs Montreal or TriStar BC, TriStar Vancouver.
Let me
You know,
interrupt
he
you there.
was
He competed yesterday at Prime, and he had a match against Matt Kwan. Amazing
Ooh.
match. Matt
oh wow,
ended up winning it. Cajun got second place in the division. It was in the gi.
oh,
So this might be a matchup in no gi that you guys might want to like tickle
mm.
for Battle Grappling, because Kwan is back into the competition mats, and him and Cajun outweighs him by a bit, I believe, but it was an interesting matchup
Oh,
because
trust me,
Cajun has a
Matt
fun
Kwan's
style.
already been emailing us.
Oh, I bet he has. And Quan actually asked Cajun to come into the Nogi division, but he didn't end up doing it. So I'm just putting that out there for you.
That I love that. You know, we love recommendations for matches because you know we definitely, and Laura's amazing and has an incredible mind for athletes and their records and what they've done and what gym they train at and all this stuff. That's her superpower. But even so, you know, we love recommendations because we can't see everything. We try to watch as much like film as possible at different events, both MMA and grappling. But it gets tough, you know, and I'm usually. But in any case, you know, it was so it's really nice to hear that. So Kajan was involved with the fighters union. Was what I was saying previously that he was interested in trying to get better representation and like actual like pay for people even at the UFC level. And that kind of got squashed. You know, his take on it, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but his take on it is very interesting. And that definitely led me to start thinking about the athlete pay side of this whole industry. And it's kind of amazing that all it took was one credible threat to the paradigm to suddenly create all this chaos.
Well, it had to be from within too. It had to be Craig Jones. Craig Jones is very likable. He has a degree in marketing. I mean, that really helped him also. He is a pretty decent grappler. He has a good sense of humor. And
It's okay.
generally, having worked with some of these people, like when we worked with Flow Grappling, big companies like ADCC and Flow Grappling don't have a very good sense of humor. They don't find stuff funny. They take things way too seriously. And I think that Craig has come at like the right time with the right amount of money to challenge that.
I mean, and he did what you really need to do in order to make this happen. He didn't attack Flow or Mojasm and ADCC directly, as in like you guys suck, you need to pay more, because that just looks like complaining. He did something about it. He created an alternative, and I think that's something that we've been trying to do, albeit with way less charisma and money.
Way
And I
less
think
grappling skills.
That's it.
exactly. And I think ultimately people are complaining about the fact that it's on the same day. I think it had to be on the same day. If it wasn't on the same day, it gives the grapplers the option to do both. And he
Right.
wanted these guys to choose, you know what? I want the money or I want the prestige. And to be honest, $1 million carries prestige with it.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, everyone's talking about it. Like, a new show is new and ADCC has history, yes, but history is great for your fond remembrances. My landlord doesn't take the history and prestige of all the exposure I just got by winning ADCC for my rent. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, and ADCC hasn't necessarily been the kind of exposure that some athletes have needed. Like I've heard of athletes who've won ADCC and they can't get matches. They can't get fights in the UFC. So, I mean, yeah, you have the prestige, but who's paying your rent and who's feeding your kids?
I mean, in a lot of ways, grappling is in the leather helmet stage as a sport.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, super amateur. And if it's ever going to be a professional sport, there has to be a pipeline, obviously you have your first tournaments and it's like open and amateur, it's like a high school football game. And that's, and I'm not talking bad about grappling industries or a Naga, because those are necessary. You have to have your first competition experiences. But then there's like what we thought of ourselves as is a regional professional show where people can step up from, killing it on like this local open tournament stage and move toward the professional.
Well, rather
fighting.
than go from grappling industries to ADCC, you have something
Right.
in between to get you ready, to have you go against harder people, to earn a little bit of money so you can go and actually go to these bigger, supposedly professional, well-paying tournaments.
Well, we've seen that with you guys too, right? Like, I mean, if you say it, you guys became a feeder league basically. And we saw that with Harrison Woods with Polaris. So he was on your guys' show. He won your championship, goes on and kills it with Polaris. And I mean, had a tough opening round, obviously. He matched up with
Yeah, that
Joseph
was
in the
rough.
first round, but but he showed that he could hang with the best of the best, and that's cool. So let's move forward then. You guys say you're a feeder league. We got this upcoming event, and if we actually let me go here. I'm going to share the screen so that we can look at the. Where did I put it? Guess share screen, and if we can look at the event here, look, Battle Grappling goes down July 6th,
It
and
does, yeah.
it's the heavyweight tournament. I look at your page and you do have a heavyweight champion. That's what it says. I'm not sure whether he vacated it. Is this a different title then?
No, this is the same title. If you look, it's Gabe Wishon
Okay.
is our current title holder, and
So before Battle Grappling exists, we had the smoker system where we had champions. So Gabe won the heavyweight title, but I just grandfathered everybody over. I didn't
Fair
want
enough.
them to lose their titles. I felt like that was it would be disrespectful to sort of just push these titles and start a new whole division after these people have already won. But usually when we have a Battle Grappling champion and we're like, hey, do you want to do a tournament? I give them the choice. I say, hey, do you want to do the tournament? Or do you want to go against the winner of the tournament? And can
Makes
I tell you,
sense.
every single Battle Grappling champion has said, no, I'm going to be in the tournament. I'm going to win the belt again. And
That
generally, it's been pretty successful for them, like Harrison Woods.
for sure. And looking at this, I mean, you've got some killers in the bracket. I look at my own, local guy here, Colton Scott. He kills it on the local scene. I'm excited to see him do this in this tournament. Who are some of the other sort of big names that you've got on here? Because I'm not sure of many of them, but just give some guys some tout here.
So we've got Gabe Wishon, who is the current title holder. He's a MMA fighter. I believe he's about to go pro MMA. He's fought some fairly big names. He fought Ben Tynan, who's in One Champion. Did pretty well. Got lost the decision, but he's a purple belt. He is out of. He trained with Ivan Salivary for a bit, and he's also out of six Travis Sarange's gym now too.
yeah,
That's his original coach, so he trains with both. And then, unfortunately, Jarrell, who is sort of here on the bottom, he got injured, so he's out. So we added another gentleman to the bracket who he recommended. Isaiah, the guy next to Colton there on the other side, I'm really interested in him. He just recently went to Eddie Bravo's invitational down at 10th Planet headquarters.
yeah.
And he had a really great match against a very seasoned black belt, and it lost in the OT to time, but very good. So Michael Evans right there. He's from 10th Planet Vancouver. He's done a couple of our battle opens. So he's coming. He's killed those brackets. We've got Gregor, who was just on the last Battle Grappling. I mean, I love bringing people back. If people come and they show up and they're professional, I'll have them back again. We don't like you lose on the show. If you have a good performance or you're a professional, I'll have you back.
Right. I
And
mean,
this was also okay. Sorry, go on, Hunter.
oh no, just like that. I believe it's about your performance and like whatever the outcome. We believe that everyone has bad days, and so people often come to us after they lose their match the first time they're on the show, and they're like, "Oh man, I hope you have her back. I'll do better." And we're like, "No, you did great."
Well, you don't have to. You don't have to like. It's funny because I was talking yesterday. I went on a women's podcast yesterday, and the lady I was talking to was like, "I'm not an elite athlete." And it's funny because this woman just won Nogi World's purple belt adult. And she's like a world champion. And she's saying she's not an elite athlete. And I'm like, what is it?
Yeah.
Like believe in yourself. Believe that you're an elite athlete.
Like
We're
what else is
inviting
there?
you to this
Exactly.
show. We
Exactly.
believe it.
No kidding. Now you've also got. I know I saw it when it first came out. Pretty cool idea. Battle of the Belts, a quintet sort of style thing with every different belt having to be represented. You've got 2 teams announced so far. How many teams are you doing with this? When can we see the next few teams announced for the Battle of the Belts? I mean, the competition's coming up soon.
Yes, we're doing 4 teams. We have all four. We like to. Well, Laura likes to put out the promotional material at like a slow drip, so it doesn't all just bomb, and then we have to repost. So it builds some interest. Who's the next team, and
I also have
especially
to tell you, CJI's been killing my posting schedule because I'll go to post, and every marketing person knows you post on a Sunday because everybody's home. That goddamn Craig Jones keeps posting every time I go to post.
you want to compete with that. It's too hot.
Well, exactly. I'm not going to try to compete with CJI. It's
I
a
know
big
we saw
pain.
Mateus Denise announced today, so
Yeah.
I know. I was like, Craig.
Oh, it's not Craig.
So actually, once we get done here today, I'm going to be putting up another team. I'm going to be putting up Mat Chess MMA. The captain of that team is Katie Smith. She's a black belt out of Mat Chess MMA. So that'll be exciting. One thing that's been throwing people for a loop is the co-ed teams. Like, people have been like, what is happening? I don't know if I could grapple a 125 white belt woman. And I'm like, none of these women are 125 white belt women, guys.
Right.
They're like black belts and brown belts and world
So
champions.
The idea for the co-ed quintet came about because we started doing trios and quintets, and it's a super fun format. I think it turns the most boring part of grappling, which is when people stall out. It happens, right?
Yeah.
Into exciting, because now stalling can be a beneficial thing for your team, or it can mean that your team is losing. So there's still interest and some drama happening, even if the guys are kind of in a stalemate position. So it's a cool format, but a lot of teams were saying hey, my gym doesn't have enough women to do a field a women's team, or my team doesn't have enough men to field a women's team or field a team.
Yeah.
So we were like, well, why not put together as a smaller grappler? It's interesting how we were talking about this. Some of the podcasts we've been doing, there's a theme. As a small dude, I weigh 140 on a heavy day.
Yeah.
I've always trained with women a lot because they're my size. It makes sense.
And as a super heavyweight, I train with men.
Right.
Like, most of my training partners are men. So I'm like, I don't care. I'll grapple whoever. If I can go and grapple somebody, if somebody's in my division, I don't care.
And I think there are certain people who have a philosophical issue with it. And I would just say that they're probably not going to be competing in this format, right? They're not going to be choosing to be a part of this kind of team. And that's okay. We had mostly men, right? Gym owners that we approached with the idea of hey, would you be interested in forming a team? Expressed concern that, you're going to have a heavyweight brown belt beating up a white belt woman, right? So we thought about it. And we talked to some of the female athletes who were really interested in the idea. And we basically, instead of the team setting their own lineups, we're doing it by size. So when we weigh in, the smallest 2 grapplers from each team go first, and then from there. And that way, as a smaller grappler, if you're winning, you're going to be going up against progressively larger people. And at some point, you can say, hey, I'm done. You can just step out. If you're I don't want to grapple this heavyweight dude, you step out.
Well, and that's what people forget about grappling, is that it's a choice. You can choose not to compete against people.
Of
We've had opens where we've had people drive. We had a lady drive from Oregon, and she had somebody in her bracket, and that person got injured, and it was 2-woman bracket. And she's like, I don't care. I'll join the men's 145. And we asked some of the men, and most of them were okay. One guy wasn't. He just opted out. I mean, we refunded him, but he just was like, I'm not going to do it. And we were like, okay, sounds good. And it wasn't a big deal.
Exactly.
And she took silver, by the way.
Nice. All right. So we've got the heavyweight tournament. We've got the quintet sort of style stuff. And then we've got these 3 super fights announced so far. That's a ton of matches already. I'm sure you've got some other sort of, some dangling fruit for us, because there's obviously some big names that have yet to be announced. You like to tease us a little bit, I'm sure.
Oh, definitely. It's been really hard. We did a show in Tri-Cities that was 8 hours one time, because I get a little overzealous, and it was really bad when we signed with Flow, because I was like, everybody has to be on Flow Grappling from our area. And so I was verging on 8-hour shows. The Tri-Cities was 8 hours, right?
It ended up, it was
we had a 16-team trio tournament. We had 2 parts. And so when we went to Vancouver, Nabil's a really good friend of ours. He was like, you can have it at my gym, but it is only 3 hours, Laura. I'm not doing an 8-hour show at my gym. I need to go home.
We love to feature athletes, and it's so hard because it is a better, like, from a watchability standpoint, it is a better show if it is a little shorter, like 3.5 to 4 hours at the most. So we try hard to restrain ourselves. Usually I'm the one being like, Laura, stop making matches, and she's like, but we got these athletes, and so it's tough.
It's happening with this show already.
Right now.
It's happening right now. I have I think 3 or 4 matches to come out with, and I'm like, Hunter, we could make 2 more matches. I mean, did you see so and so? And there's always the emails. It's really hard because Harrison emailed me and he's like, hey, I could defend my title, and I'm like, damn it, Harrison, I just budgeted for what I've got right here.
Right. And that's ultimately what it is too. There is a tendency, and I think it makes sense why something like Fight to Win has 50 matches, because it's primarily friends and family who come out to watch these things, and some level, the more friends and family you can draw from, the better. So the way the athlete pay model that we've come to is that we have guaranteed pay for our titles and for our main event and matches. And then the rest is by commission. So every ticket or live stream that is sold, we communicate with the customer to find out who they were there to support, and they get $10 from each sale. So that's what we're going to cut to. And it was really successful. On the last show, we ended up paying out about $5,000 in prizes to the athletes, which comes out to about 50% of our revenue.
Jordan Stutt made more money than Tristan or Christian did because he sold tickets.
Of course.
That's a weird thing to think. You lose your match, but you made a ton of money.
Well, I mean, it allows you to because it comes down to the business side of these things too. A lot of athletes, and it might be true in an IBJJF format where you pay to compete, but if you want to get paid to compete, ultimately your part of the business is to show up and put on a good show, but it is also to sell tickets, right? You have to have something going on, and you have to promote.
And I think that's why. So we come from an MMA background. We do jujitsu. We like grappling, but we own an MMA gym. Hunter's coaches and my coaches now are MMA people. And if you want somebody to fight and they're a professional, you have them on your show. They sell tickets. They get paid. And I think a lot of jujitsu promotions, and I think this is kind of what Craig's sort of veering towards, making it more accessible for MMA, is thinking about it in an MMA model. A lot of the pay in MMA is based on whether you can sell tickets or your viewability.
Right.
So Hunter, when he was fighting, he was a gym owner. It was guaranteed that if he fought locally that 30 to 100 people were going to come. So he was often offered pretty decent money to go and compete locally. Wow. So it's good to have that kind of model for jiu-jitsu as well, so athletes get paid.
And it's also interesting too, we've had people come to us and say hey, why not just do purple to black belt competitors? You have a ton of them apply every show, and every show you have white and blue belts especially featured. And the reason is that friends and family haven't gotten burnt out and jaded that oh, Billy's doing his jiu-jitsu thing again. By the time you're a brown and black belt, until you become more widely famous, the people are less interested in seeing you compete because they've seen you compete so often, right? Whereas when we have a teenager on the show, that's where the money comes from. That was the second highest earner, was this teenager. He ended up selling, tons of tickets because his friends and family, his aunties are all super excited to see him compete still.
Makes sense. Now, I know, Laura, you said you're a marketing person, obviously. Are there any matches you can let us know about?
Oh, you want to know secret matches?
Maybe one or two. I don't know. Are there?
It's really hard.
Are there any other title fights?
There aren't. We're just going to do the one. We're just going to do the heavyweights.
Nice. And who stepped in for Jarrell?
Jarrell. So Jarrell got injured. He unfortunately had a knee injury. I guess they were working heel hooks, and I find the thought of heavyweights working heel hooks very scary in a cage because we're doing it in a cage. He has
he's been replaced by Rhett, right?
Rhett Isabella is replacing him. He's been on a lot of shows like Fight to Win and
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think
we've got a couple in the work. So we've got do you know Steph from 10th Planet?
Yeah.
He's gonna have a match against a gentleman who did really well at our open named Chance Miller. That's one I can. It's really hard because everything's in transition right now. I've got like 3 matches in front of me, but they're all not finished.
right, they're not cemented.
Of
I
course.
can't. We can't announce Matthew Diniz today, unfortunately.
Yeah, no,
But
we
I do
haven't
think
locked it in yet.
I think some of these matches, like where you have unknown guys, and we're not unknown. Like Steph's been around, and he went down and competed at trials.
Did very well at ADCC.
But the Chance is an interesting guy because he's been training jiu-jitsu for about 6 months, and already like I I feel like I'm not sure who's hanging with who at this point on the mats because his wrestling background is really deep. So you get these guys who come out who have an incredibly deep grappling skill set, just very little exposure to jiu-jitsu until they start to have it. And I'm actually really excited for that match because you have someone who has much more like jiu-jitsu experience going as someone who has like a really strong grappling background in Chance, and who I think is really dynamic and fun to watch.
There is one athlete announcement I can make, which I never thought I would have to make. We've got I don't know, Nabil over at 10 Planet Vancouver has a team in the quintet. This young man right here is his brown belt on his team.
Nice.
So for the first time ever in Battle Grappling history, Hunter's actually going to compete on the show.
I was actually gonna ask you about that. That was actually gonna be one of my later questions. Well, last questions was, Hunter, would you ever do a match on this? And I guess that is a yes.
I've resisted against it for a long time for a number of reasons. First, I'd say that it always seems like not sus, but like it feels weird to compete like on your own show. I know as like a MMA coach, if like I'm competing on someone's like we are looking at an athlete to fight on a promotion and it's like the promoter's student, I'm always like, a little like have to look into this more carefully. So it just felt like a conflict of interest.
We owed Nabil a favor though. We did a women's trio where we had our team in the trio and one of our ladies got injured pretty badly. So Nabil loaned us Rachel Holfer. Yeah. So Nabil called in his favor. He said, you need to loan Hunter to me for the quintet. Because all his brown belts are in college or they moved to Toronto. And
well, he's got Jordan and Justin, but they're also not necessarily, they might not make the size discrepancy.
Yeah. Exactly, because the weight is only 800 pounds. Like that's a lot of weight.
It's definitely a game in itself. The true formula has to be played.
Well, that's the part of the whole fun of this format. And we were like, quintet already creates this kind of like, you have to create your spreadsheet of all everyone's weights and figure it out, like who's going to be able to cut what. And we wanted to just add some more layers of strategy, like with the belting of like, okay, do you want to pick someone who's inexperienced to be your large person on the team? Because, hey, they have a much better chance as a bigger person to stall out a smaller skilled opponent, right?
But sometimes that doesn't always work. You have a skilled opponent who can finish bigger opponents.
So it's smaller. Do you want to have like your heavyweight on the team be a black belt? But then that means your lighter opponent, like players, are at a skill disadvantage. It's an interesting thing, and it just happened that they needed an under 150 brown belt to finish their team.
Well, and also, I would say I'm probably going to put their poster out last because it takes a minute to get everybody's pictures. But
yeah,
Nabil has a wild card on that team. And people had better be watching because Nabil's only made a couple of black belts. He's only made, he's only made two black belts ever.
Well, I'm just thinking it's got to be Micah coming from Ontario, but that's just me.
Well, we'll see. That'll be the extra secret announcement we're going to tease today. But yeah, and it's okay. Like, and I think the biggest part for me of competing on my own show is letting go of control of not being there to micromanage all the details.
Oh, it's almost happened a couple times. Like we have dropouts. Like sometimes while people drop out the same day, they'll like miss their flight. We had a 125 CJJ tournament, which was amazing. If you guys can find it, it's on YouTube now.
Pretty easy to
But
find.
it was 125, and we were going to end up with a bye in the tournament. I had this book tournament. 125 is not easy. And I said to Hunter, I said, hey, I'm going to offer the guys you. Like, you could be in the tournament. And Hunter was like, no, I don't know about this. And the guys were like, I said, you could either have a bye or you can have Hunter. And all of them were like, we'll take the bye.
Well, I mean, it would be a little like odd if I won, right? Because I mean, if I had to think about it, like if I'm going to go grapple, it's unsafe for me to like not try my best, you know. So I'd have to go out there, and if I win, like who do I pay the prize money to? Myself? Like I don't know how that works.
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
that, or you're competing on every other card as well now.
Yeah.
Well, can I tell you, this is sort of battle grappling history because, like Hunter was saying in the beginning, how we got started was we started running these smokers because we're an MMA gym. Gyms are famously known for making no money. So, they always have these like events, like in-house grappling tournaments and like competitions to make extra money. And we were like, oh, we'll have this smoker. We'll make extra money to help with the gym, with other things like travel expenses for us for competing. And our friend Austin, Gabriel Austin Daffron, who's now like the 145 combat jiu-jitsu champion. He's also like double battle grappling champion at this point.
In 2 divisions.
He was like the first battle grappling champion. He used to like go, all these guys in the community wanted to grapple him. He would be like, give me $150 each, show up to Laura and Hunter's gym and grapple me. And whoever wins gets the pot. But and he would always win.
Of course. All right, I got 2 more questions for you here before I let you go. We've chatted for almost 40 minutes here now. Last event, the main event, Christian Tremaine, Jordan Stutt. You guys, I know it was crazy. Overtime was nuts. People were fans. Each side had their arms sort of in the air. And Laura, after that, you're like, we need to do a rematch. Have you discussed that? Is that going to happen? What's the plan with that title?
I think, broadly, I would love to do a rematch. It was a good match.
I'd love to do a tournament with both of them in it on opposite ends.
That'd be good too. I think that way, if the rematch happens, it happens because both guys are having good days that day. And like it'll be interesting to have that part of it. I think a rematch would make a lot of sense too as a single match.
My biggest problem though is Harrison Woods would want in.
That's true. I do think that it would be a good match to revisit. Especially given that. It went so close. Ultimately, it was a super close match, and going to riding time and overtime is as close as it gets in the EBI format. So
well, and we've changed our rule set since then. We are, for this show, we're not doing EBI at all. We're not doing the OT. We are doing all quintet rules for all the matches.
Yeah, Quintet L, the event quintet. So I think it's gonna be interesting to try. I think the overall, like I have to say, as a referee, like my percentages of correct calls and my from if you look back historically has been close to 100%, but you make mistakes and it happens, right?
Well, can I tell you,
it's tough. I mean, we see it with AVA up here. It's got that rule set for the overtime, and I mean, each mat has different sort of views on what, and like the escape is supposed to be a simple thing to notice. But there's so many minor details where, is that actually locked in a submission? Is he above the shoulder, below the shoulder?
These guys are playing the margins now too with their OT. They are training to look like they're winning the OT or they're out. Like like rewatching that match again, it was funny because at the time I was like, I don't know, like maybe this was a bad call, but then watching it again, like I felt like both guys were trying to make it seem like they were still had that locked in when it was pretty far.
Well, both guys are real competitors, and you play to win, right?
Exactly.
You have to, which means you play the rules. In the same way that if you're in a points tournament, you get up on points. Like it's not my preferred style of grappling, but it does make sense when someone says, okay, now I'm just going to maintain my point advantage and win. And the same thing goes with overtime. Like people learn how to game that rule set. And it comes down to questions of does your position actually involve control of the arm, or you just have the arm
and then it's
circled,
still once again a ref's decision.
Yeah. And so we decided to move to quintet because while there is arguably more subjectivity, what it allows us to do is always push for more action. and it's a really exciting rule set, and I think that it's going to be interesting to implement. And the nice thing is that we're connecting it to this flagship quintet event. So if we don't end up liking it, then we don't have to keep using it.
I personally think I was like, let's reinvent it, Hunter. Let's do instead of OT, like traditional, the back mount spider, why don't we do 50-50 shootout? Like you set everybody in 50-50 and whoever subs wins. And Hunter's like, that's crazy, Laura.
That would be crazy.
I mean, like I said, you do no time limits shootout, and ultimately that would be the best thing to do. Like if you really want real pure grappling,
I do like first to score, to be honest.
Yeah, and then you're calling points. It sort of it's an interesting thing. There's so many ways of doing this, and I would happily have a conversation all day
It'd
about
be a huge podcast.
Yeah, I know, right? We're trying the quintet thing because, as far as I can tell, no one has done it, or at least no one prominently has done the quintet rules outside of the quintet event in Japan.
Well, and I think it's really good for the heavyweights because then it will encourage them not to stall so they don't get the shitos.
Right.
Yes.
And you could argue that it's not a point system, it's a penalty system. But when it comes down to it, the way we're implementing it in single matches is that at the end of the match, if one competitor has a penalty and the other does not, the one who has fewer penalties wins. And then if they're tied on penalties, we're going to go to referee's decision. And I found that in general, as long as you have referees who know what they're looking at, we're usually in kind of unanimous consent.
Well, and it's not ever been it's been pretty easy to tell who's winning the battle grappling matches. Like, it's funny, I've only had, I think, maybe 2 people in 10 shows stall. And I've never really had those people back. I was just sort of like, it was boring.
Right. And that's usually like we mentioned earlier, if you lose your match but you look good or exciting, we'll have you back. But if you win and you, kind of are not fun to watch, that's less likely we're going to have you back, honestly. But the quintet format, I think it's nice about it is it encourages movement and it encourages people to go for it. And that's always what we want to see.
Let's go back for a second. We're not doing this because we make money. You all know we don't make money. We're doing this because we like watching grappling. I love to sit and just I don't get to watch the show when we're actually doing the show because we're doing so many production things and making sure it looks good for everybody on TV. But we come home after the show, 1:00 in the morning, and we watch the show again. And if you're boring, then I don't want to watch you grapple. It's just, because I'm not getting paid. I'm just getting paid to enjoy a really good show with local people. So it's really motivating, to get after it. But also, how do you want to be remembered? Do you want to be remembered as the guy or lady who stalled a 10-minute match, or the person who, went out and did a roadhouse choke for the first time, or, did a backflip?
All right. The last thing I want to, the Roadhouse choke, the cool thing about that, obviously, was it turned into a friggin' instructional right after.
I know, Rob's career is made now.
It is. And so are some of these other champions that you've got here. I wanted to look at, the page of your champions. Now, we've got champions in pretty much every division here. A lot of them we haven't seen compete in quite a while. So tell me about that. Who of these champions can we see later on in 2024?
Well, you guys are definitely going to see Maria if you go back up there. She actually just won ADCC trials in Brazil. She's going to be going to ADCC. She won 2 trials, by the way. She won both Brazilian trials. And so you'll be seeing her, but not on Battle Grappling probably, because she'll be winning ADCC. I'm sure you'll be seeing Harrison Woods in the next year. I would love, Aislyn's always game to come. Kavin is always game. I've had Kavin on.
Will be in the tournament, correct? In the quintet?
Yes. She is. She's the captain of her team. They just started their gym, Definitive Jiu-Jitsu, down in Seattle. She in Austin. So, and then I would love to have Issa there back. She's been busy on the IBJJF. Zach Schneider would be great to have back. He's from Spokane. He was a finalist in Combat Jiu-Jitsu Worlds. Always Austin. Austin's the beginning and the end. He'll be here when we stop doing Battle Grappling. He's like the Battle Grappling cockroach. Kengo, I would love to see this year a match between Kengo versus Luis Mangala. If we can make
Unify
that
those belts,
happen,
yeah.
unify the belts.
Like we had that match booked for the Vancouver show, but unfortunately, it just
Luis
didn't work
got
out.
injured, yeah.
Oh no.
And then I would love to see Carmen back again. I would love to
Yeah.
do a tournament. I know
She's
that
very impressive to watch.
she would
She's
rather
fun, yeah.
do. She would love to do like 115, like do a 115 women's title would be great, and have her in that bracket. Maggie Meyer, always Maggie Meyer. We're just gonna run like 100 shows this year,
Yeah.
and everybody will be on them.
I guess then before I let you go, how many more shows, like you've got the show coming up in July, 1, 2 more shows in the rest of 2024?
I think maybe 2 more shows. I want to do another all women's show. That was interestingly enough, for like as much as people say they don't want to watch women grappling, my most popular videos on YouTube and my most popular show on Flow Grappling was the all women's show.
Some of our women's matches have 14,000 views. We have men's matches with like 2 people who have like a names, and they're well known in the grappling community.
And then we have women's matches that are 14K.
Those matches have 250 views. Yeah, like these 2 guys, two a brown and a black belt going after it. No one cares, but I think people would like to watch women's grappling. It just isn't made. People don't make it the main event.
No. So I want to see, I think we're going to do at the end of the summer, we're going to do a show with probably a lot of CJJ on it. A lot of people have been asking for combat jiu-jitsu. I really want to do an all women's show. I definitely want to do another remote show before the end of the year. I'm thinking Seattle or Oregon, probably, just because they need some love. We haven't been to Seattle yet, and we haven't been to the lower part of Oregon or California. So that's kind of what I'm thinking for the future.
Definitely. Because it's hard, we try not to overstress ourselves, but we will.
All right. So for those of the people that have made it through the 46 minutes that we've chat here, just let people know where they can find you guys on social media, where they can check things out, because I know you have the new streaming service you guys are doing as well. Just let people know. The floor is yours to shout out whatever the heck you want to shout out.
Absolutely.
Don't forget the sponsors, too.
Oh, yeah. No, I want to thank our sponsors for the event, Dreamwalk Coffee, Pujitsu, and Obi-Wan Clark. And anyone, it could be you. If you know someone, a company, you own a company, you would like to help sponsor athletes to get paid and be a part of this, let us know at Bellingham MMA on Instagram, at Battle Grappling on Instagram, and you can watch our stream at daruma.tv.
Oh, and if you want to stream your show or have us come film your show, we're willing to do that. We also do that at daruma.tv. That's our new company that we've just started this year.
Appreciate you guys taking the time today. July 6th, next Battle Grappling goes down. Excited for it. Cannot wait to watch. And cannot wait to see these next announcements. Miss Marketing Queen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.